we can other people in as needed. All right, thank you, and welcome to the March 20th special meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, the last of our budget review meetings. Before we begin tonight, I will, as I have in other meetings, remind anybody from the general public who is listening, there is no public comment this evening. However, there is a public hearing scheduled for March 26th in a hybrid format, both at City Hall and virtual, and the public is welcome to make comments at that time as we do our final deliberations. With that, Esther, may I get you to call a roll, please?
Yes. Mayor Harry W. Rilling,
I am here, thank you.
Mr. Ed Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Ed Camacho, Mr. Kendrick Constant,
Here.
okay, Mr. Troy Gilleret,
Here.
thank you, Mr. Artie Kasimis, Ms. Ann
Here.
Sorry, Esther, you're breaking up a little.
Sorry, my internet went a little haywire. Ms. Ann Yang,
Ms. Yang is here. She indicated that before.
oh, apologies, and with that, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right, before we get into our open item review and then our Board of Education review, Mr. Mayor, any opening comments from you this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said before, we all know how difficult this year has been, and it gets even more difficult when we start looking at what the potential is for grants and other things to be cut at the national level, and it's very unsettling. I know that we have the city side of the budget at 2.5%, and I know that we are currently at 4% for the Board of Education. It is critically important. One of the most important things that a city has to do is to educate their young people. I know the Board of Education came in at I believe it was over 11%, and they cut down to 9%, and we came in at 4%. I know in speaking with Dr. Estrella and other people in the board, they are doing their due diligence and trying to pare down as much as they possibly can to live within that 4%. I don't think going any lower than that would be responsible at this point in time. I know that during the course of the year, there may be things that change that we may have to take another look, where we might have to work with the Board of Ed to try and increase where we can. We've done that in the past. I plan on doing that in the future. We know that, as I say, there's a lot of situations right now. We don't know what grants are going to be cut. We don't know what pass-through monies may not come to the city of Norwalk. We've already lost about $1.4 million in grants, and we're concerned about a significant grant that we have that we may be losing as well. So I would encourage the board to look favorably on the Board of Education budget, even though it's a lot less than what they asked for. And I don't think there's any possible way we could go below that. And again, I want to thank the Board of Estimate for their hard work, their due diligence, and try to move forward the best we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also let the record show that at 6:36 p.m., Ed Camacho did join the meeting. Good evening, Ed.
Good
All
evening.
right, Tom, I believe we want to move to open items and we want to start with Rec and Park.
Yes, so I'd sent out earlier today the list of 7 open items for either discussion or attachments for review, but at the last minute, we had a slight change. The Recreation and Parks Department is looking to expand the use of an existing account called the Learn and Play account. And I will let, I believe both Ken Hughes and Robert Stowers are on the line. So take it away, gentlemen. And again, this is just a very high level overview, no details, no presentation. Just wanted to get in front of you with this idea. Go ahead.
Yes, I come before you before about this same account, but can you hear me first of all? Because I know sometimes my sound isn't very good. So first of all, can you guys hear me?
It's
Yes, we got you,
okay at
Robert.
the moment.
Okay. We have an account called the Play and Learn account, and it's unclear basically what this account was established for. We do know that it's been used for our summer camps to bring in revenue from our summer camps, summer youth camps, and also we've been using it for some of our programs, bringing in revenues, and then expending some of those revenues out to pay for these programs. We want to expand the use of this fund, but specifically, what I'm kind of introducing to you tonight is we have a person that's been our systems analyst, and she's been around here in parks for some time, somewhere around 5 years, and she's been part-time, but about a year and a half ago, we brought on a new reservation scheduling system that is a platform in which has to be monitored. It has to be, this person has to work with the platform company. They're continuing to develop this software. We continue to have troubleshooting that is necessary. This person has trained all our staff. She's been in the conversion of this whole platform. So she's worked on with the company to install this platform. She also is this platform not only registers all our programs, from pickleball to youth programs to basically all our programs, and the accounts add up to over $1 million a year in terms of what she's responsible for collecting. And all the funds don't go into this fund, but some go into the general account as well. When I'm proposing, when I'm introducing, and we are developing this as we go along, so I'm just introducing it tonight, the idea of using this fund for our recreation programs and transferring some of our general fund expenses that come out of the general fund for recreation programs and transferring those to this account, transferring those expenses to this account and moving a portion of the recreation expenses to a personnel, so that we can actually hire this person, this very required, necessary person, so that we can hire her full-time in this capacity. She has a lot of responsibilities, and we want to do that. But at the same time, we want to grow this fund, and the fund has been growing over the last 3-4 years I've been here. Just to give you some idea, its balance in 2022 was 194,000. 2022 was 425,000 balance at the end of the fiscal year. 509,424 at the end of 2025. So it's been steadily growing, and we feel that this fund is growing, and it's easier for us to run our recreation programs out of this fund and use the general fund for the staffing that we need. It's a neutral budget. There's no increase. There's no increase in revenues. There's no increase in expenses to the proposed budget. It's just a matter of reprioritizing and using this account for our recreation programs. And we're just bringing this to you. We still have some work to do on this in terms of defining this account, in terms of exactly which expenses will come out of this account and which revenues will go into this account. So we still have some work to do, but we wanted to introduce it tonight just to let you know what we're going to be bringing to you.
So can I have, I do have a question, Ed, if I can ask.
Please.
Yeah.
So at the end of the year, the monies in this account then fall into the fund balance, correct? It falls into the general a fund balance. It doesn't remain in the account. It goes to the city, and because it wasn't part of the budget, it goes in the fund balance, right? Is that the way it works?
Currently, this does not go back to the general fund. It stays in this account. It's an account that continues. It's an open account that continues to revolve. It's a revolving account. So expenses and revenues both come out of this account.
Okay, so it's
Ed,
yeah.
Ed, if I could, because Robert referred to this at the end of his intro, which is that we're asking them and directing them to put together a program document for this fund. The fund exists. The Learn and Play Fund exists currently. Everyone knows about it. The important thing is going to be to make sure that it's well defined what's being spent out of there, what is eligible to be spent out of there, and which revenues go into that fund. And then as another part of that, we will have we'll have to figure out the timing of it, but at some point, if that balance in that fund hits a certain level, that money would revert back to the general fund. So it could end up being a revenue generator for the general fund. We'll have to look at that and see how the cash flows through there. But at some point, there will likely be revenue that comes from that fund and goes into the general fund. And like I said, that's going to be part of the program that Robert and Ken are developing right now.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have, if you're taking that money and transferring it into the personnel account, how does that affect the cap? Because that obviously has to be considered when we think about that.
Yeah, it's not an increase in our budget. Our budget will not increase at all. It's just transferring funds from one line item to another. It's no increase.
But I don't think the account you're talking about is included in the cap. You're taking money from that account and putting it into a personnel account that is part of the line item that would then perhaps increase the cap that was set by the Common Council. I'm not sure. I'd like to hear from Mr. Schmidt or Mr. Ellis on that.
Yeah, Mayor, what's going to happen, the way I understand it, is that while the personnel cost will increase as a result of moving that person from part-time to full-time, there are other line items, other accounts within the general fund that are going to be reduced because those costs are going to move into the other account, into that Learn and Play account. So they're going to offset each other. Those costs associated with some other accounts within his budget are going to reduce what's being spent out of the general fund. And so there will be net, there will be no increase in his budget. If anything, it'll decrease a bit.
Yeah, we'll move the activities that we're doing now in the general fund to offset that. They'll be moved to the Play and Learn account. So there'll be a subsequent offset. One increase off, and it'll offset the other.
And how much is in that account right now? You said over 400,000?
Right now, because we just started collecting money for the from summer youth camps. The balance right now is probably somewhere around, I don't know, Ken, we've collected about $500,000 in the last month or so. So I would say maybe 700,000 in there now, somewhere between.
We,
And
I think if we could, after we settle this, we should take a look at that account because that seems like an extraordinary amount that we're holding off to the side, I guess, for lack of a.
Well,
But out of
Mr.
that,
Mayor, this
hold
is,
on, hold on, Ken. Out of that out of our balance right now, though, most of those monies, at least 50%, 50 to 60% will go toward our summer youth camp expenses. So we're bringing on summer counselors right now. We're starting to hire. So a lot of that money will go to pay for our summer school staff, our expenses, our equipment, their activities. So the balance is high now because we're taking in the money and we're not spending it yet. But at the end of the fiscal year, the balance will not be that high. Like I said, it was usually somewhere around between 200,000 and 400,000 at the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
I would just, I would suggest, gentlemen, that I understand you bring this to us tonight for our awareness. I think you've heard some fair questions raised, the impact on the cap, the concern about a significant amount of revenue that sits within the department. I would ask you to work very closely with our finance team, with Tom and with Jared to crystallize all of this. Because by the time we basically have a week, by the time we get to our
Right.
deliberations on the 26th, we need to know whether this is buttoned up and finance recommends and supports, or we are not ready to make this move.
Okay.
So you've got a week
Yeah.
to get
have it.
this all documented, and we can then formally review it in our final deliberations.
Okay.
But there are concerns that I think you've heard that are valid.
Definitely. We'll be able to explain them.
And Tom and Jared, I would be looking to you again as the finance team to be thinking on behalf of the entire city, like you do with all of these efforts in terms of whether you recommend and support this or whether there are concerns.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank
Thanks
you.
both.
Thank you.
All right, Tom, where do we want to go to next?
All right, we'll move through the rest of the open items. Some will require or are open for dialogue. Others are just reflective of some attachments that I've sent over the last few days. But starting out first is in the community services world with the 3 family coordinators that we've spoken of numerous times. Lamont is not here tonight, but Deanna is, as well as Anna Vivian Estrella, to talk about this. The ask was to seek out alternative sources of funding, perhaps with grants. And Lamont had responded with an email last week. But if you, either Anna Vivian or Deanna, if you want to jump in and just give a quick summary of that and take any questions that might arise.
I'm here to speak on it, but I see the mayor has his hand raised, so I will give you the floor, Mayor.
Oh, I thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if that was from the previous hand raise or a new hand
No,
raise.
it's still the same. It's a different one.
Okay.
This is a critical position, or these are critical positions, and I'll explain. These have been funded by grants in the past by, I believe it was the Ritter Foundation and through the Dalio. I'm not sure, Anna, you can clear that up, Anna Vivian. But we last year, before the budget season, asked them if they would fund it for another year. They had not agreed to fund it beyond a certain point. And we met with them, and they were quite stern, I guess, for lack of a better term, of saying that we had told them we would fund it in that budget year, but because of the stress on the budget, I asked if we could ask them to fund it for another year. They said they would, and we gave them assurances that we would fund it this year. And it's critically important that we do because the work that these 3 people are doing is absolutely amazing. And Anna Vivian will give you more details about what they do, the benefit to our community, and how they've helped so many families in the city of Norwalk who are struggling. Especially this year is going to be even more important. So I just wanted to put my support behind this, and I wanted to, and I'll, Anna Vivian, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Yeah, so the Ritter Foundation, the Parent Ashford Heidenreich Foundation are the ones that have really supported this initiative the last 3 years. And to the mayor's point, we went back and asked, well, no, they committed to 3 years and we asked them for an additional year, which they agreed to. And we're very cognizant that, you know, it was a hard year in order to absorb the positions. Now we've been able to be successful, and I do just want to highlight that they helped over 1,000 households, so Norwalk residents, over 1,000 Norwalk residents came through these doors. The 3 individuals that work in this department, all by virtue of the hiring and its intent, they're all Norwalk residents as well. So I just wanted to be just elevate that and refer to Lamont's document. If you didn't have a chance to read it, it really outlines the important aspects of it, how it's fiscally responsible, the ways that the city has been able to step up for its residents in ways that we just didn't have the capacity to do before. And through the foundation support, we were able to pilot this program. And to the mayor's point, we made a commitment. So this is our word as well. And if we continue to involve public and private partnerships, our word is important to uphold, right? They're looking for us to, we've committed to it. We've seen the success. This program won an award this year because of its foundation, because of how helpful it's been to Norwalk residents. And the mayor just did an interview about it. So it's getting highlighted across the state as a gem, as something that we should be really proud of. So I am more than willing to answer any questions. I know last meeting I went through an example of how the family navigation, how community resource specialists help the residents in the city. I'd be more than happy to give another example if you think it'd be helpful, but I don't want to necessarily belabor the point, but be responsive and just refer to Lamont's document that really highlights how it's been a success for the residents of Norwalk.
Yeah. Anna Vivian, before I get to Anne, right? I don't think the argument here was the success of the program. The ask from the BET was, are there other grant sources that we could look at for funding? I did not, in Lamont's response, I did not see the simple yes or no answer to that question. Is there a simple yes or no answer to that question?
So it's not a simple yes or no, but I will give you a more thorough response. The reality is that we're referring the residents. The request was for us to go to the people we're referring to and ask if they could support this program in any way. Lamont did have the opportunity. He convenes with the executive directors of the local nonprofits on a regular basis. But if we're being honest, they're looking to us for support, especially right now. And that is slightly highlighted in the document that with all of the federal uncertainties and the funding uncertainties that are happening, they weren't able to commit to funding this program through the city. Nonprofits have to fundraise for everything that they do. Generally, they're funded 30 to 60% via government, state, federal contracting. So they don't have the capacity to fund us in return. But he did go and he did try to see if he could garnish some supports. And then there are philanthropic groups, but they're funding the nonprofits for the work, right? They're funding the nonprofits to provide the clinical services, to provide the food and clothing that we're referring the Norwalk residents to. So it's a little bit of conundrum because we're bridging and we're connecting to services that are already underfunded. And the ask did go out, but it's not foreseeable to really say the nonprofits would be able to fund us in return.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Yang.
I hope my audio is better.
So far, so good.
Yes.
Guess maybe if I keep the video off. What was the funding each year? When did it start, and what was the funding for each year from these sections?
I'm sorry, you were cutting up a little bit, but I think your question was what was the funding from the philanthropic groups for each year?
Yes.
Okay. So I wasn't here in the original year, so you'll have to excuse me. I can get those figures back to you. I know that the request in year 1 and 2 was higher because we actually started off with 5 navigators and we reduced it down to 3. So we did, size the program to the right fit for our city. Last year they were able to provide 250,000, and I believe the year before that they provided 250, if not 300,000, to support the program.
And this year, the ask for these three, we have in there, the request is 163. Does that sound right, Anna? Yeah.
Yeah, that does. And I believe that each one of them committed $75,000 for this current budget year. And again, they made it clear that there's absolutely no way they could continue. Generally, when you get a grant like this, they don't want it to go on forever. They want you to start assuming the responsibilities yourself. And that makes all the sense. We do the same thing when it comes to our block grants and other things. We make sure that anything we fund, okay, we're going to fund it, we're going to get you started, but then you're going to have to kind of take this on yourself.
Yep.
So if we could just have those numbers since the beginning. So, Mr. Mayor, this year, it was 75 and 75. So that means it was 150 from these two organizations for the fiscal year 2024 to 2025.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's 150. And the chair for 165, this is not a full dollar number. This is the salary number. What is the number which would be the actual cost to the city if these are full positions with benefits?
I'm not sure. Jared, are they considered eligible for benefits? I'm not sure.
So they do already receive benefits, and my understanding, well, Jared just turned on his camera, so I'll let him answer.
Yeah, if this is coming from city money and they're going to be full-time employees, then yes, they'll be eligible for benefits, which is about I think this is where you're going, and about 40% roughly is what we figure for fringe benefits. So 40% of the salary.
But that number is, while it's not in this wages line, it is calculated in the overall city budget, is it not, Jared?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But it calculated the overall benefits. So if we were to look at the actual cost to the city, we're really talking about not 165, but more like 240.
Yeah, I take your point, Ann, that the fully burdened cost is higher than the salary line. My simple point is that fully burdened cost is baked into the 2.5% budget increase overall on the city side.
Mhm.
I'm not disagreeing that it is a higher total burdened cost. I'm just saying it's housed within the proposed budget.
Up until this year, are these people, I think Lamont had said that they were like 9 versus full-time salary city employees. Is that correct?
And could you repeat it? You broke up. I'm not really sure I understood your question.
I'm very, Lamont had, I think, had indicated he wanted these new people coming full-time. Previously, they've been not salaried, but paid 1099 workers, so that would not include benefits.
No, no, they've been full-time and they have benefits available to them now as full-time employees.
And they're full-time employees on the city's roster.
Correct, correct. Yeah, that's why we've been focusing on the 165 number, because the benefits are already in our budget and have been factored in.
Okay. Any additional questions here? I think we can consider this asked and answered at this point. Obviously, this is a program we want to continue to fund. We asked to look at alternate ways. There are not. So it is within the 2.5 budget as we make our final determinations. We need to factor that in. Thank you, Anna Vivian. I really appreciate the detail, and please thank Lamond as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time and consideration.
Yep. Okay. Tom, do we want to move to the library conversation?
Yeah, so the next component also in the community services world with the library. There was some dialogue at our regular budget meeting about the part-time costs and the fact that Sherelle wanted to make some adjustments to her part-time employees to get some more market competitive rates. Her initial request was 721,000. The current recommendation is 671,000. I had forwarded you via Sherelle a substantial amount of demographic backup as well as explanations and comparables to neighboring municipalities. But we have Sherelle on the line here too. Take any questions?
Questions about the documentation we received?
Sherelle, you with us? Actually, I don't see her.
You're muted, Michelle.
I'm sorry, I was
Sherelle.
coughing,
Oh,
so I had
there you
muted
are.
myself. But good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to come before you again on behalf of our library part-time staff. When we spoke before, I just mentioned that our budget had been cut by 50,000, and my ask was to have that restored. In the document that I provided to you, that was basically giving us the amount of staff we would need, the raises we would need, and I understand that that number is substantially high, but that's what I think we would need to really service our library patrons. So I just want to preface this by saying that, you know, the library is the city's department that's open 7 days a week, not 5 days a week. And we're open between 7.5 and 10 hours a day serving the public. So our budget is stretched over 7 days and not 5 days. And we'd like to have, you know, a competitive part-time hourly rate to attract the best candidates. Our basic service that people come to rely on are our computers, our Wi-Fi hotspots, which are able to be checked out so people can have Wi-Fi in their home for a certain amount of times, and certainly our ebooks. You know, the usage has increased since COVID. So I refigured the numbers to see if we can start by giving our custodians and our librarians raises. And I want to say that none of our staff have not had raises or cost of living increases, our part-time staff, in over 10 years, and our librarians even longer. The last increase we gave were to our part-time library assistants and part-time clerks. I gave the backup for our market rate for Connecticut as well as for the United States. And so Connecticut, Norwalk is in Region 4 of the Connecticut Library Association's chart. And the market rate for degreed MLS librarians is $34.02. And we currently pay $26.29. And, you know, surrounding towns pay their library assistants who have no degrees more than what we're paying our librarians who do have degrees. So when I refigured the numbers, 1 second to pull it up. So our, give me a second. Always happens to me. I'm so sorry. When I refigured our numbers, we were at 721,000. And I just want to say that our librarians do not get, our part-time librarians do not get benefits, where some of the surrounding towns do pay their part-timers benefits. So let's see. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Sorry about that. So we were able to, we can't give everybody raises, but as I mentioned, if we could give our custodian raises so that we can, attract custodians who know how to do, a little bit more, or know that the job is a little bit more than just, cleaning the bathrooms and vacuuming. And if we could give our librarians a partial raise and get them up to $30, whereas the market rate is 34. Maybe we can phase in the others. And I just want to thank Jared and Tom. They did take time to speak with me, and I do understand the constraints that we have this year. So if we could restore the 50,000, we've come up with a scenario where we could pay our librarians $30, again, $4 under market rate, and raise our custodians from $17 to $20. And that came in at 720,144,000. And we have another scenario, but that, that would include cutting, some hours. And that came in at 713,664,000.
So you were talking about restoring 50,000 or less, depending on which scenario you're referring to?
Correct.
And how much under the second scenario, how much less than the 50 would that be?
If I
Just
listen to
just a
the numbers-
ballpark, it doesn't matter, just
If I listen to the numbers, it was 43 versus 50.
okay, so it's not an appreciable difference, but okay.
So roughly 37. Let's see. Oh,
And-
no. So 21, so let's say, so the first scenario would be roughly 1,000 under, and the other scenario would be roughly maybe 7,000 under. And I do want to point out that we have not had passport service at our library since COVID. We have been approved at both of our facilities. We're just waiting for the passport service had some turnover. So we've just been waiting for them to give us a start date. But that revenue, we were bringing in at pre-COVID, we were bringing in roughly $30,000. That money was actually going to the city and not to the library, but that's something else to be considered.
And when do you anticipate starting the passport service?
I think I've been trying like for the last 6 months. I'm hoping at least by summer, that because we're already approved, we're just waiting for them to give us the go ahead to start to do what we call Passport Day, and that's where they come over. They're with us. We do like this, like a grand opening for the program, and they're here with us, to help us launch. So we are hoping. I'll give a July 1st start date.
Okay.
And Chairman, Mr. Abrams, if I could weigh
Sure.
in here, as Sherelle mentioned, Tom and I did talk to Sherelle at length about the request. I landed on not restoring the $50,000. I believe that there's still some room in the 671,000 where there could potentially be some small increases. I'm sympathetic to her request, and what I committed to Sherelle was that we would work with her up until the next budget to do a more thorough analysis of the job market, and to see if there are some reasonable increases for certain positions, maybe for all of them, but to do a better analysis. All this information came to us very late in the process, and so we haven't had a chance to vet it very well, and so it's difficult for me to evaluate it in on short notice. So, but again, I appreciate it. I really do, and we run into the same situation in our department where we're trying to fill an accountant position or a clerk position, and we may not be in line with what the rest of the market is paying. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate that struggle, and so I talked to Sherelle and committed that we would work over the next year or so and see if there was something we could do in next year's budget. But for now, we are staying. Our recommendation is to stay at 671.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that point of view. Other questions from other members of the Board of Estimate and Tax? I won't speak for my fellow board members, but Jared, I tend to share your point of view. I know it in the grand scheme of the total budget, $50,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but every cent counts in what we do. My personal recommendation would side where you are, Jared, which is we just work the numbers very hard inside the budget we're given right now. That said, is there anyone on the board who disagrees with that as an approach as we go into the fiscal year?
Ms. Yang,
Dan,
I am very sympathetic to the need, given that these part-time staff, they're not paid a lot. They don't receive benefits. And should we be able to find savings perhaps in other areas, then perhaps we can be helpful. This request.
fair point. If we find savings elsewhere, this can be a top priority.
And thank you, and thank you everyone for listening. But I do want to iterate that, these people have been with us for over 10 years with no raise, no benefits, no cost of living increase. So I just want to put that out there, and also just reiterate the passport. So that might be an area that we can look into. These people work very hard. We're 7 days a week, not 5 days a week. So our budget is, pretty stretched. So while I do appreciate and I do understand the constraints, but, I just want to make sure that the library, people understand the worth of the library and the staff who keep it running 7 days a week, 7.5 to 10 hours a day. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherelle. All right, Tom, the next item I believe was the headcount request summary, which I know you sent out in advance. I think you were just looking for final questions or feedback on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the question was, how many requests did we get and how many did we recommend? So in short, there were 13 requests for 13 additional heads. And again, this is outside of any vacancies that are there. This would be 13 adds to the full-time payroll. And we gave the green light to 6 of them. The dollar amounts were $946,000 in total for the 13, and the 6 that we approved. Some of those were partial, either half year or 3/4 year funding. Came out to $409,000. The bulk of the savings was in the police force. They had asked for an additional 5 officers, and the recommendation is not to add them at this time. And then there was one position, the recycling coordinator, that would help out Tom Zabo, who's in charge of our waste and waste management and recycling area. That position will be filled, but we are going to fund that with the nip bottle money that we get from the state of Connecticut. So all those annoying little bottles that are everywhere but the garbage cans, it seems, we get a portion of the revenue from the state based on how many of those nip bottles are sold by the major liquor distributors. We get those payments twice a year, and they average about $35,000 each.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, my instructions to the department heads were that there were to be no extra hires unless they were absolutely critical to the function. I was a little disappointed to see 13 requests. Obviously, I did speak with the police chief, and I do want to increase the size of the police department at some point. But maybe this is just not the year, and I think he understands that. But again, the requested position, what we're trying to do is, even if a position is vacant, we're not looking to fill it, because again, I can't stress strongly enough, and I think everybody on the BET and other people throughout the city understand the critical situation we are in right now, not knowing what's going to happen in the next couple of years, whether funding is going to be coming from the federal government, pass through to the state, and then pass through the cities. The state is having a situation similar to what we're experiencing. So I would ask that we look at this very cautiously and only hire or only allow an increase in position that is absolutely critical to the operation. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Any questions or concerns about the information that was shared earlier today from any of the other BET members? Okay, then I think we can consider that matter closed. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is a Harbor Commission. This is from last night's discussion. We have Chris McDonald and Alan Kibb. Help me out. Is it Kibb or Kibby?
Kibby.
Kibby. Okay, all right. I won't ask again.
Thank you.
Yeah, to provide a little more clarification on last night's discussion, primarily centered on the revenues. I did have a call this afternoon to go over it, and it certainly helped clear up the issue for me, and I hope it does for the board members as well. Go ahead, Chris, if you want to take it away, or Alan, if you want to start with any opening remarks.
Apologize for our little bit of confusion last night. Just for the people who were on the call, we had a little confusion about getting all of the appropriate people from the Harbor Commission to the meeting. And so we've solved that tonight. So Chris McDonald is with us. Chris is our financial guy on the Harbor Commission. He takes care of our grant applications and managing all of our funds. So what we did last night, just so, because Chris wasn't on the call, is that Jeff Mangles, my vice chair, and I talked about the tremendous increases in revenue we've developed over the last year with raising our mooring fees and things like that. And because of that, we can lower our grant request. And that was all very fit together very well until Ms. Yang raised her hand and said, well, how come your spreadsheet shows your revenue going down? And I was a little baffled by that until I talked to Chris today. So I handed it over to Chris McDonald to kind of explain what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Well, part of the reason the bottom line is went down is because we're requesting $10,000 from the city this year instead of $20,000. That was part of the decline. And the other is that the previous year, the previous fiscal year's actuals, 23-24, were skewed because most of our revenue is derived from the moorings, both the individuals who pay, and most of those pay upfront at the beginning of the season, but also the managed fields. There's three yacht clubs, Norwalk, Rowayton, and Sprite Island, that manage a mooring field, which means that the club actually pays us directly for the mooring fees, and then they supply the hardware, the mooring balls and the chains and all that, and then they service it, they store it in the winter, they do all that, and then they turn around and charge their members a markup fee for the people pay the yacht club pays us, and it's an arrangement that works for everybody, but that money in 2023 came in after July 1st. That was the first year we raised the fees from $3 a foot. So we charge by the foot of the boat. So $3 per foot. We raised it to $5 per foot. I think, Alan, there was a little bit of back and forth with the clubs. We made it official So the revenue came in the revenue came in late summer instead of before June 1st. So the 2023 year that showed a $90,000 revenue was because we received half of the previous year's income after July 1st.
Yeah, let me explain with a little bit about this. Is that it so happens in the bylaws of the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission that our fiscal year is January 1st to December 31st. So we keep our books and our records based on the calendar year because that's what our charter says we're supposed to do. And that works very well for us because the Harbor Commission is really busy in the summer, and that's where our revenue comes. In the winter, it's a fairly quiet season, unless we're rebuilding a train bridge somewhere. But it's usually quiet, so we don't make a lot of fuss about being out of phase with the city. What happens is we have to take our annual 12-month report, and we have to move the goalposts 6 months either way. So. And that puts it right in June and July. So our revenue spreads over 2 fiscal years, and we really don't have a whole lot of control over what revenue goes where. So one year can look tremendous, and another will kind of disappointing because of when we receive the revenue by squeezing it out of the boat clubs and so forth. So that's really the reason that the revenue appears to go downhill year after year, when in reality, if you move that to a 12-month kind of calendar year deal, we would be showing revenue actually the way it is received, which is what we do now.
It would be more consistent year on year if it was done that way. But so that's all. Our expenses and revenues are all clustered in the months right on each side of each side of the fiscal year cutoff. So it's harder to make that a level prediction. So anyway, long story short, we saw some extra revenue in that calendar year because of that factor. The 2024 request was 80. We had shown an actual revenue of 90, a request the next year of 80, and now a request for 25-26 of 70. A little bit of that is because the one thing we're doing is we're installing more transient moorings and like that, because we've got set up for visiting moorings, not just for yearly things. So we had some expenses projected for 24, 25, which we haven't expended as yet. That might slide into the following year. So we decreased the request a little for 25, 26, both on the city grant, and partly because that's why we requested less from the city, because we might have some forecasted expenses spill into the next fiscal year. So from everything I've heard, I don't think we should have an objection to a smaller request. We are managing things quite well, and we're 80% self-sufficient in our budgets. So I think I hope that answers everybody's question.
I think we expect ourselves to become more self-sufficient year on year, as we've done this year by reducing our request. I'll also say that the Harbor Commission has been much more aggressive about collecting revenue from the yacht clubs. It's been a kind of you all know, if you're the don't ask for your money, you're the last person to get your money, and so we've become very aggressive about our collections. So that's helped with moving our revenue forward, which is why we have such a 324. So thank you.
Thank you. Having not been part of last night due to other commitments, did this address the issues and concerns, Ms. Yang?
It's still confusing in terms of what you're talking about in terms of the revenues, because your mooring permit fees, I understand what you're saying. So could you give us a longer run, maybe a 5-year run, because it shows 65 to 47 to 50 on your mooring permit fees, yet your mooring permit fees going up. So I mean, I commend what you are doing in terms of raising the fees, becoming self-sufficient, but I still don't understand the numbers, the revenue numbers. So if we could just have a little bit more history on that, that would be helpful.
Well, 2023 was the first year we raised it from $3 to $5. That's, I think I looked up 22, 23, 23, 20. No, I'm still looking at the wrong one. I think we were more in the order of like $25,000 or $30,000 per year prior to the raising of the fees. Things we collected more in fiscal year 23-24 because we received a lot of the payment after that, and now we're thinking that 47 this year we're in, 50 next year is probably where we're at, because the number of moorings and all don't vary a lot. We are, like I said, we're pushing the transient moorings. That's this other line here. I think we over projected in 4,000 the previous year. I think we over projected last year, but that's about where. So we're hoping to increase that, and and also just better collection, better managing it better. We hope to keep it around $50,000. The 65 was an anomaly. Because
so Chris, what I'd ask then, just to put a pin in this and allow us to keep moving, right, is understand the phasing is an issue with our fiscal year versus your fiscal year. If we could get a view of 3-year history on revenue forecast and actuals on your fiscal and understand what those look like, I think that can flatten this for everybody and get it consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I
agree with that, Ed. Exactly. Do it on your fiscal year end. Don't try to, you're making this a little more confusing than it should be. I just want to get a feel of what's going on down there.
Okay. I can go back and pull up, I've been the treasurer for about 2 years, but I know we have, I have the records of the application form that that has been sent in previous years. It'll give you in your format that, for example, the 22-23 or the 21-22 requests and revenues.
Chris, can we just show it in 3 calendar years rather than
Don't match our fiscal year. Use
calendar year.
Calendar year. Show calendar year.
May I just ask one sort of just very general question? I think the heart of this is, at least in my mind, is what did the $15,000 last year do for you, and what do you expect the $10,000 this year to do for your operation?
Sure. So on the expense side, we pay the harbor master's stipend, which is about $12,000 a year. We pay for the water quality interns that we pay. That was about $13,000 between their salary stipend and some expenses that they had. We're investing in the transient moorings, $5,000 or $6,000 a year. They're coming up for the testing. That's going to the maintenance on that. We had to do some maintenance on the harbor master's boat last year. We occasionally have to get hit with an abandoned vessel. When a vessel gets abandoned, we end up having to pay somebody like GNC Marine to haul it and break it down. That can cost us $5,000-$6,000. So we carry a couple $1,000s a year in that. We didn't get it last year. We got hit for $6,000 the year before. We spend about $20,000 on the planning consultant who walks us. He's the expert on the deep process and walks us through a lot of that, and we'll take on special projects when we were looking into the walk bridge impacts and stuff like that. Secretarial services is another $3,000. So that
Maybe my que-
that
maybe-
sums up to like $65,000. We're requesting.
Maybe my question is,
Yeah.
what would you have to do without if you didn't get the $10,000? In other words, what couldn't you do that you anticipate needing to do or wanting to do?
It would probably hit stuff like the capital improvements of the mooring fields and stuff like that. I mean, other stuff is more fixed. We might be able to cut back on the
Material, that's
Consultant.
actually, that's
What's that?
already in hand. Those things are here, they're
Right. Well,
they're
but
bought.
we have some of that paid for under the 24-25 budget. If we didn't get any money, then we would have to look at where some of that what is not already committed.
Okay, all right. That was my sort of a general question. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ed. Ms. Yang, is your hand
Yeah.
raised again? I
have-
just wasn't sure. I'm not.
I have
trying
one
to-
last question. You have the health department, 3,000,
Yeah.
state health department or the city health department?
E-health department. What that's part of our water quality intern program. That's something that the health department runs. And they have interns out sampling the water and doing things like that. And that program runs through the Harbor Commission. We don't really have a lot of control over that. We've had a few surprises where we changing the director of the health program. They increased the pay rate for their interns, and that's something that just gets passed through to us. So it was a big surprise last year that we had to kind of cut some programs because the interns had gotten a little bit of a bump in pay, but it hadn't been communicated to the Harbor Commission, so we had to cover that.
Right. So the harbor management pays for it, but the health department, I believe, runs it. And we're meant to get 3,000 from health department and 3,000 from Shellfish Commission to offset what's being billed to us directly. In some years we've gotten it, in some years we haven't.
But the 3,000 health department, the city health department, correct?
It comes, yes, that's through from the city health department.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we can get a view of that on your calendar year, the revenues and your expenses, that'll help us close this out. We can do that via
Sure.
email and exchanges. Thank you.
Yeah, and one more thing. If I'm not mistaken, I heard you say something about you not collecting from the yacht clubs in a timely manner, or are you saying they're delinquent?
Well, that 1 year we usually get it sort of April, May, and in 1 year, and it was the year we raised it. So I think there was some delay, or maybe it was just when I'm not sure why we got the money in July. So from a lot of it, so like half of it came in July. They often pay us in 2 installments. I don't,
Okay,
and-
it's a timing thing. I mean, I thought they were saying something about not paying.
No, it came a couple months later than we would normally.
That's fine.
But it rolled into the next.
That's
fiscal.
fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we still have a lot to get through, so I'm gonna move us on if you don't mind. Tom, next was fair housing and line item detail. I think you're still working that.
Yeah, no, that's just, there was a $10,000 expense line or expense item that they had on the wrong line. They've got to correct it and send it back to us. No dollar impact. I think we can move on from that unless
Tom?
anybody has any. Yeah.
It's just Jalen
Oh,
C.
yeah, sorry. I saw my name on there. I didn't realize it
Sorry
was
about
me.
that.
It was you. So go ahead.
So I went, and we don't have a staff person right now, but I did reach out to, a few people. We were asked about 10 years ago to consolidate the lines, from contract services, office expenses, seminars, and equipment, because since we're such a small department, there were things like on Post-it that was like $125. So we were asked to just combine that to one line item. And again, it's not clear, but that's what it is. It's just the total from all of those services, because since we're such a small department, you would have things like Post-its for $100. And we were asked to do that. So if you guys want us to, we could break it down, but that's why we were asked, because it was so small that at the time they didn't want us to break everything down.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for that level of detail. It's, as long as you have backup to roll up to that 10,000, then we're good.
All
Moving
right,
on.
I believe next was transit, Tom.
Yeah, so we had some lengthy discussions last night on the transit district. I have Matt Pence on the line here where there were really no specific takeaways, at least none that can be solved in one day. But one of the items was the interest expense on the line of credit that they carry, and we, meaning the finance department, has agreed to work with Matt over the coming time frame to try to come up with a plan to reduce that cost, especially in light of higher interest rates than what we've seen in the past. But we do have Matt here on the line to take any follow-up questions that anybody might have on that line of credit and interest or anything else. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'll give you a quick rundown. We are pretty much state funded. We have an $18 million annual budget. We cover that through fares, advertising revenue, and the majority of it comes from the state. With that, there's a number of non-reimbursable expenses on the state side. One of those items is interest. So we've had we get our operating agreement, and in order to get funding for our operations, we invoice the state, and there's usually a timing lag. So it's gotten a little better, but we have to usually front like a month worth of operating expenses. And as part of that, we do that through having a $4 million line of credit with a local bank. A few things have happened. Interest rates have gone up. We've also had a major facility renovation going on. So when you build capital, it's even longer, the lag to get your funding. So we rely on this line of credit. This is nothing new, but the interest expense is growing. And I think it's reasonable that last night we were looking at the interest expense and they're questioning, is there a better way to do it? And that's where Tom and I spoke today, and we'll work through items to see if there's a way where we don't have to spend money for working capital. On the flip side, we have mentioned this to the state. They have gotten a little bit faster. Once our construction project is done, I don't think there'll be as many lags in reimbursement for construction capital funding on the state side. So a couple of moving pieces, but here for any questions that you may have.
Just to follow up from last night, Matt, this is Troy. Jared, just wanted to let you know that the 196 is consistent every year for the last 3 years, pretty much. And if there's any way that the city could lend the money to the transit for their working capital, that would be much better than us paying out of money out to a bank for 7.9%. You said prime plus a quarter, right? Is that what you said, Matt?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And you're paying it, there's probably an unused fee on the working capital facility. I mean, they are revolving credit and everything. It just would make more sense to me if there's a way, Jared, that we could work it that they would borrow it from us and then you're keeping all that money in the city. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. And during our conversation yesterday, I let you guys know that we would look into that and see if there are even other options, and we'll do that. We'll take a look at that.
I think the other point is there was a point in time where there was $3.5 million of debt on the district side, and we're turning the corner. And if we could ever build a reserve internally, we could fund ourselves. So that's one of my goals. I know it takes time, but I'm glad we're not digging out of a hole anymore. We're going to be back to par and not have that debt on our books, which will help because that's hurt us in the past as well. So.
Okay. Any additional questions or follow-ups from last night? Matt, thank you very much. Jared, Tom, thanks for continuing to work with Matt as was discussed last night.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys.
Have a good night, Matt.
You too.
The last open item, Tom, I believe, was the citywide headcount history that you sent out earlier today. I believe that was a follow-up from questions from last night. Any additional questions that any of the BET members have, having received that information? Okay, then I guess we can consider that one closed as well. Thank you, Tom.
Welcome.
And I believe now we move to the Board of Education presentation. Am I correct in that regard?
Yes, that's the completion of the open items, and they are up next.
Okay. Dr. Estrella and team, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm just gonna open my presentation.
Dr. Estrella or Lunda, is there anybody on the guest list that needs to be promoted at present, or well, I guess they could just raise their hands and I can let them in if need be.
I think everybody that we
Yeah.
needed as a panelist is already on.
Right.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Mayor Reeling, members of the board, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you this evening. I want to begin by acknowledging something we all share, a deep commitment to Norwalk's future, whether it's stewardship for our taxpayers, community well-being, or the next generation of leaders. We all are here because we care deeply about the strength of our city. Tonight, I come before you not to ask for extravagance, but to ask for sustained, smart investments for our city, and most importantly, for our most essential asset, our children. It's no coincidence that Norwalk has been consistently ranked amongst the best places to live in America, including recognition by livability.com and Fortune magazine in 2023, as you guys can remember. These accolades reflect many things: our vibrant community, strong local economy, but at the heart of them is the excellence of our public schools. Families choose Norwalk because of the quality of education we offer, which strengthens property values, attracts businesses, and contributes to the overall prosperity of our city. This year's budget request is not about launching new initiatives. It's about maintaining and protecting the very programs, systems, and supports that have made our schools, by extension, our city, successful. We all understand that costs, whether for utilities, staffing, or services, continue to rise, often beyond anyone's control. Inflation affects everything from transportation to classroom materials. Special education needs and supports for multilingual learners continues to grow. Contractual obligations and the work of retaining high-quality staff require fair, competitive compensation. These are not optional expenses. They are essential to running safe, effective, and high-quality schools where every student has the opportunity to succeed. I recognize and respect this board's and mayor's priorities to safeguard taxpayer dollars. That's a value we share. In that same spirit, Norwalk Public Schools has operated with discipline and responsibility. We've streamlined operations, partnered closely with the city to reduce redundancies, and continually look for efficiencies. But no matter how carefully we manage resources, the gap between rising costs and the budget increases we've received has gone wider each year. Have grown wider each year. Simply put, we are being asked to sustain and improve results without the financial tools necessary to meet today's realities. And so I pose this question: are we prepared to risk the progress we've made for the sake of short-term savings, or are we ready to invest wisely now for the long-term strength and stability of our beautiful city? When we invest in education, we invest in Norwalk's workforce, its economy, and its future. Every dollar we put towards maintaining strong schools, multiplies far beyond the classroom. It impacts local priority values, property values, community safety, the city's overall growth trajectory. Quality schools are not an expense, they are a foundation. And the results are clear. Norwalk's schools have shown real measurable growth and progress. Graduation rates are rising, chronic absenteeism is at its lowest level in years, mental health supports are working, reports of depression and suicidal ideations have dropped dramatically. Our students continue to excel academically and artistically, from award-winning music programs to career pathways that prepare them for success beyond high school. These are not accidents. They are the direct results of deliberate investment in program staff and services that meet the needs of all students. We have built momentum that should not be reversed. I understand the need for caution, especially when it comes to the public's hard-earned tax dollars. But caution should never lead to undercutting the very thing that makes Norwalk thrive. Tonight, I urge you to support this budget request, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Necessary to maintain what works, necessary to prepare for the future growth, necessary to ensure Norwalk remains one of the best places to live, not just today, but for future generations. Now, to provide greater clarity and transparency around the realities outlined here, the team and I would like to walk you through the data and details behind our request. Each slide reflects not only where we stand today, but the concrete steps we've taken and continue to take to manage resources wisely while meeting the needs of every student. As you know, in 2022, the city and the district conducted an efficiency study. And in that study, we learned that, believe it or not, we were quite efficient to the point that we were understaffed in many areas, and yet we were still working really hard to provide outstanding services. And in areas where we could collaborate, we worked alongside the city to ensure that we built those efficiencies to do so. Lunda, can you speak to some of those efficiencies that we built alongside the city around human resources?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Estrella. As you know, we work very closely with our HR department, specifically our benefits team. We work in collaboration. We're actually right now, we just implemented a new time and attendance system working, the two HR departments and the two finance departments working together. We collaborate in payroll, and we actually cover for each other during absences as well. And so that's just one example of the areas where we collaborate on the HR and benefits side.
And through that study, we also looked at operations and looking at ways we can streamline services. And Sandra Fayoes and her team have worked alongside the city to also build efficiencies in these areas. Sandra, can you speak to these, please?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We've worked the closest is with the Recreation and Parks Department. We actually just got a joint usage agreement that was approved by the board. And I know that on the city side, it will be presented to the city side committees. We determined things like building greater efficiencies with landscaping is a good example, use of facilities, recording meeting times at various facilities through a joint system. I think what I would like to actually really focus on, if I may, it's that the efficiency study had recommended not only these efficiencies be captured between the city and the Board of Ed, but they actually had suggested that we add staff. And across these three departments that are in front of you, it was in the efficiency study actually documented that we needed to expand our staff for the number of facilities that we had. We haven't done so because of the funding, but we have been able to actually work with the city to take on and to collaborate on some of those tasks also.
Thank you, Sandra. And in technology, we've actually, if we look at in the efficiency study, how it showed that hardware relative to the staff ratio, we actually were doing an outstanding job given the amount of work that the team needed to do. And I know that Ralph Alancisi and his team have worked tirelessly to ensure that despite technological tools increasing across the organization, particularly after the pandemic, they have built efficient systems. Even though the efficiency study we said that we needed more personnel, we have not been able to bring in these additional folks into the fold. Yet we continue to find creative ways to build efficiencies across the organization. In those methods, we've also been really successful at creating programs across the organization to ensure that students have the tools that they need to succeed and effectively meet their goals throughout their K-12 experience in our schools. We have established social emotional supports, as you know, as a result of the pandemic. Many of our students have experience a lot of distress, and we wanted to make sure that they were receiving the services they needed to be able to thrive, because no child can thrive if they're not feeling emotionally supported. So we've built in additional school counselors across all of our elementary schools. We've established partnerships that allowed us to enhance our social emotional services in middle school and high school, not only having counselors, but also bringing in clinically trained experts to support students around their mental health needs. And as a result of this, we've seen a lot of success in terms of reducing suicide ideation and increasing joy and students feeling a good sense of belonging within our schools. Yet we are in a place where, given the budgetary constraints that are coming forward, we will be challenged with potentially losing counselors across our schools in elementary, middle, and high schools. Already, we have lost our clinical and social emotional supports at the middle and high schools because we were funding this through grants and we were unable to infuse this into the operating budget. We have social workers in residence working with our students, which was an added support that was funded through grants that will now not be available to our students.
Dr. Estrella, I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you trying to advance your slides? Your slides are not advancing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did. Thank you for that.
Of course.
So our social, like I was saying before, we had social workers supporting our students, social workers in residence supporting our students. And if you've been following our 2024 Norwalk Youth Survey showed that this investment in mental health resources and student supports have made a measurable impact. Reports of persistent sadness and suicidal ideation have, like I said before, declined significantly since 2021, and the rates of depression and suicide attempts have been cut in half. However, like I said, these are our fought gains that are now at risk. The difficult budget cuts threaten to roll back much of this progress at a time when our students need them the most. Now, when we look at our choice programs, we've been working alongside the state initiatives around workforce development, creating strong pathways for students to ensure that when students complete their 12th year, they have choice in deciding where they want to go, whether they want to transition into college or they want to go straight into the workforce. We've been working with many local partners to do this work, yet a lot of these programs will be at risk, alongside many of our arts programs that we've developed K-12 pathways for. So currently, we've had investments in teacher training and development around our international baccalaureate programs. We've made investments in training our staff around marine science. As you know, we have a federal grant that has helped us develop our staff to have a K-12 continuum around this work. And we are proud to say that as a result of these efforts, we now have an international baccalaureate program that is in development at Narragansett Elementary School that then feeds into Nathan Hale and Roten, and then from the middle school feeds into Brian McMahon High School and CJS. In the area of marine science, the program only existed at one point only at the high school level, and we understood the importance of starting to expose our students as early as kindergarten in partnership with the Maritime Aquarium and with federal grants. We've been able to further extend this pathway to support students at Jefferson, Westbrook, and then transitioning them into Brian McMahon High School. Yet, creating these amazing programs and now, given the budgetary constraints, reducing academic pathway could limit valuable opportunities for students, affecting their ability to explore their interests and build essential skills for the future. These programs provide critical experiences that help prepare students for college, careers, and evolving workforce. So, given some of the restraints that we have right now, these programs are at risk and will result in limiting our ability to provide career options for students, reducing hands-on experiences for students, and continuing to widen the opportunity gap that we were working so hard to close and had made so much progress towards. As you know, we are known for our music and arts programs. We have done so many incredible things in this area. And we thank the mayor, the council, and the BET for their efforts in supporting this work. There has been over $600,000 investment in new instruments. All elementary schools currently offer band. And we also have performing arts, dance, and theater, something that is very unique to Norwalk and that our families and community take a lot of pride in. If we look at our music program across the continuum, we look at the fact that Norwalk High School percussion group was promoted to WGI Percussion Scholastic World, the highest level that can be attained. Brian McMahon's marching band was promoted from A class to open class by US bands. This is also the highest level in that category. Norwalk's music programs continue to set the standards for excellence across the state, with students achieving top honors at state and national competitions. These accomplishments highlight the importance of sustaining investments in music education at all levels to ensure the success. We've created a K-12 continuum across our organization in band and string, starting at the elementary school level, yet given the current fiscal challenges, these programs now are at risk. Having access to these programs and making sure that all students have access, regardless of their socioeconomic background, is also placed at risk when we know that music and art also impacts academic success and progress. I want to also go into how these reductions will have a significant impact in other areas. As you know, throughout the pandemic, we've worked to enhance and maintain the academic portfolio across the organization to ensure that students have the tools they need, particularly when so much was lost during the pandemic. We needed to work extra hard and provide those interventions necessary so that our kids could thrive. And if you look at our district performance index, you can see that these efforts are paying off because Norwalk ranks #1 in English and mathematics in comparison to other city schools similar to ours. And in science, we rank #2. And when you look at the district's performance index, we are the #1 city school district in showing growth in both English and mathematics. And we've maintained this category now for over the past 3 years. We also know how the pandemic has impacted attendance, and we've been carefully monitoring chronic absenteeism.
Dr. Estrella, it's happening again. I
Oh,
apologize.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening with mine.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. And we know how attendance has been impacted over the course of the several years as a result of the pandemic. All of these programs, all of these structures that have been put in place over the course of several years have yielded really positive outcomes in us reducing chronic absenteeism. We have seen a 9% decline from its peak. We dropped from 26.8% to 17.3%, and we continue to make strides across the district. But this cannot happen without our continuous supports around mental health, without the efforts that we've put in place to make sure that students find joy in coming to school, that students can come to school and engage in learning that allows them to manifest what they are passionate about and what they want to see themselves doing in the future. Not only have we made strides in chronic absenteeism and academic attainment in grades 4 to 8, but when you look at our graduation rate, we have also made some really positive strides. When I came to Norwalk, our graduation rate was at a decline, and we worked really hard putting interventions and supports and making sure that our students felt that they belonged, that they got the supports they needed, and also that they were able to have pathway opportunities that allow them to see themselves in college or different workforce experiences in our communities and beyond our community. And as you can see, our graduation rate has been on an upward trajectory, being at 91.6%. And we have been monitoring our results for this past year. And if our calculations hold to be true, our graduation rates have risen to 92.9%. We're still waiting for the state to put out their public numbers, but if our numbers are accurate, we are continuing to move in an upward trajectory. And this speaks to the efforts and investments that the mayor, alongside you as members of the BET and the Common Council, have put forward, and our incredible Board of Education, who have worked tirelessly not only to look for resources within the operating budget and the capital budget to improve practices within the organization, but also looking for grant opportunities that will help alleviate the costs within our taxpayers so that we can continue to do this important work. I'm going to now turn it over to Mr. Asmani, who will provide some greater details in terms of where we are in the budget process and some of the challenges that we've faced in order to reach the target or recommendations that have been outlined by the mayor's proposal.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella. I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, but it's
Thank
showing us the
You need to flip
presenting
it though. We're
mode.
seeing the presenter view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. So again, thank you, Superintendent, for the introductory remarks and for providing context to the presentation. As I shared with you, I did provide you the copy of the budget book. As outlined here, there is a QR code, so I'm not going to belabor this slide, but it is a 78-page document that includes overviews of assumptions of the budget, together with some line item trend information that are included in that budget book. But to begin with the process, I'll kind of just want to recap where we were this time last year. As you know, each year we present a budget, the board approves a budget, we bring it to the city side. It goes through the review process together with other departments, and the BET weighs in on the request together with other factors. So last year at this point, we had an 8.2% budget request. At the conclusion of the process, the BET approved a 3% budget request. And so what happens then, we get back and we reconcile the budget. And so that's what we will do this year, assuming we don't get the 9.7% as requested. And so this is just an example of some of the adjustments we made last year. There were things included in the budget that we either forego or we postponed or we found other opportunities to make ourselves whole, including some reductions. Last year, we did have some central office reductions. We made some adjustments to our turnover estimates. But in any event, there is this process that's ongoing. And so I share this slide because we have actually begun this process now in attempting to get to the cap that's currently set at 4% within the confines of the budget that the mayor and the CFO had recommended. So what are some of the impacts that are impacting our budget right now? Obviously, health insurance is a big factor. We just recently learned what our health insurance rates are going to be for those that are on the state plan, the 2.0 plan, which is the same plan as the city is on. So as of July 1, the base rate will be 9.9% year-over-year increase. However, what the state does on top of the base rate, they issue what they call a regional adjustment, which takes into account the cost of healthcare. The regional adjustments is valid for a 2-year period. So this regional adjustment will be beginning July 1, 2025, and will carry into 2026. So being in Fairfield County, our regional adjustment is 1%. So we would add the 1% to the 9.9% for an overall increase of 10.9% for our health insurance. In our preliminary budget estimates, what we had indicated was 10%. So this one is going up about a percentage or so higher than what we had indicated in our initial proposal. As you recall, last year, members of the National Federation of Teachers voted to transition out of the state plan to the Cigna high deductible plan. We are still waiting to hear what the rates are for the high deductible plan. However, last year, the Cigna plan did go up 15%. Last year was the first year of a 3-year contract agreement with them. The way that agreement was set, they did set a ceiling of 15% year 1, which is what the rate came in. Year 2 and year 3, there is no ceiling. So we're waiting to see what that would be. And just to provide you with context, on the state plan, we have about 500 covered individuals. The Cigna plan, which is the teacher's plan, has about 1,000 individuals on this plan for a combine of 1,500. So an increase on the Cigna plan has an exponentially higher impact than increases on the state plan. So briefly, I'll walk you through what are some of the drivers in this budget. As the mayor indicated earlier in the presentation, the board did approve a 9.7% operating budget request. So what are some of the drivers that are driving this operational budget request? Well, the first one is contractual wages and increase about 2.8% year over year. So this includes wages for staff. Included in this budget, we do have an additional 9.4 additional teachers, about 8.7 full-time equivalent paraeducators, 3 physical and occupational therapists. These are individuals that we're not necessarily adding into the following year. These are individuals that were required to be added this year based on contractual class sizes, based on individual education plans for students with special needs, and occupational therapists. So these are positions that are not, they're new in the year, but they were added this year after the budget was adopted as a requirement. And so we're carrying those positions into the budget this year. I briefly talked about the employee health insurance, so I'm not going to go through that again, but that is the second biggest driver. Our employee health insurance accounts for almost 14% of our budget. So that is a driver. We did lose quite a number of grants that we did not include in the budget. However, there were some opportunities last year with grants, and we took on some expenses that are carrying over into this year that we're supporting locally because those grants have expired. These are to the tune of 2.4 million. The 3 major components of that is we received a grant, a behavioral health grant, and we used that to contract with an outside agency for board certified behavioral health analysts, BCBAs. And so these are individuals that are servicing our kids. And so even though that grant went away, the need for those behavior analysts for our special education students, that need continues. And so those costs have been moved into the local budget. Additionally, we did receive grants this year. We received a marine grant that allowed us to do the marine summer program. And then we also had received a one-time grant that allowed us to offset the cost of our summer academy that had traditionally been locally funded into the grants, but those two grants have gone away, and so now those are being absorbed into the local budget. And then finally, we did receive a grant mid-year last year that allowed us to add middle school security, which weren't there before. And so with that grant expiring, in developing this budget, we have continued to provide those middle school security within the local budget. And so those are the three components of grants that we've carried over into the local budget. Now, there are other grants that expired that we have not carried over, and I think I shared with those in a prior meeting. Last year, as the mayor indicated at the beginning, there was an opportunity where the city received 5 million ARPA grants. 1.8 of that was appropriated to the Board of Education, which allowed us to reconcile from the 8.2% to 3%. And so there were items in that grant specifically to the schools. We used that to pay for some of the sports programs, athletic programs in our district in lieu of eliminating them. And so we used that as a one-time stopgap to cover those. And so this budget does include those programs in the base budget that was requested. And then 1.4 million is specialized needs. This is to accommodate our special education students. Our prevalence rate right now, although below the state average, but it has shown continual increase at 17%. As I mentioned before, we have added some para-educators, but we're also seeing an increase in out-of-district tuition. And so those combined is about another $1.4 million. We are excited to see that the state has also noticed that special education is not just a Norwalk issue, it's a statewide issue. And in an upcoming slide, I'll talk about what the state is doing in trying to help local districts like ours address some of these special needs expenses. And then there is transportation expenses. Obviously, we have over 11,000 students that get transported throughout the district. We have two major transportation contracts. One is the Durham, which is the biggest one. Durham contract is going up 5% contractually, and so that is part of this budget request. We also have another contract with ECS Transportation. ECS Transportation is going up 7%. And then we also use Relia Transportation for special education. That contract is going up 7%. And so these are some of the drivers of the transportation expenses. Also, to address some of our programming needs, we are adding 2 small buses and 2 large buses to the fleet that services our children. And so those combined are 1.2 million drivers of our budget. We are excited that we will be opening the South Norwalk School next school year. With that, however, there are some expenses that come with it. We have been gradually increasing a grade each year. This upcoming school year, we will be opening up a third grade sections. So we're anticipating 3 additional teachers and 3 additional para-educators on the operating budget side, which is about 450,000 or so. But then there are also building side expenses that are required to maintain the building, things like custodial services, security services, utilities for this new building. That is about another 450. So between those two, this is an additional operating expense at the South Norwalk School. And then finally, one other driver here is our food services fund. This is the fund that provides school nutrition to our students, and we are anticipating about a $0.7 million increase in that. So those are some of the major drivers that got us to the 9.7% that was tentatively approved by the Board of Education. What I'd like to do now is to kind of show you how our budget is sliced. And so this is something that you've seen. Salaries and benefits account for about 80% of our overall budget. So that is a significant driver. Professional services, these include specialized services that are provided by external individuals or firms. So these include things like our substitute contract. We don't do our in-house substitute management. We have an outside agency, so when we need substitutes, we will call them in, they will bring substitutes to our buildings, and then they will invoice us. So that's an expense that's included in professional services. I mentioned security services. We also do the same thing, the same way we do substitute for teachers. We also have an entity that helps us with substitute for nurses. So when nurses call out sick, we also have a service that makes sure that the nurses come to staff the schools. First, we try to find coverage in-house within the district, but when that's not possible, we do bring in substitute nurses. And then I mentioned earlier some things like special education services, speech therapy. Those are things that are provided through contracts. So those are examples of some professional services. Property services include things like things that maintain our properties. Custodial services, we have outsourced most of our custodial services, and so we have a contract that does that, and so that's part of property services. We have maintenance contracts for mechanical systems within our buildings, HVAC systems, and so forth. So those are included in our custodial services as well. Other student services, it's labeled here as other services, but these are other student services. So the big one here is our out-of-district tuition. It is paid out of this account, together with our student transportation. And this is where we charge expenses for all of our special education needs that we send to our outside providers. Supplies and materials includes things like gas, electric, school supplies, and so forth. So this chart is a summary of these items. However, in the budget book that you have, all of these items are broken down into greater detail. They are found on page 35 through page 38. So you can drill down the specific line items for each of these items that I walked through, and they're in the same order. So you can track 3 years of actual, the current budget, and what we're requesting. So you have this information in your graphs. And again, this slide just shows to explain how that pie is split up between these various items. Another component that helps us, and we've had conversations around, our grants. So we have quite a number of grants that flow through us, either directly from the federal government or through the state. And as we are all wondering about what's happening with the grants, I've had conversations with Jared and Tom, and I know that the city is also dealing with similar uncertainties on where our grants are heading. But again, this just to show that right now, our grants are accounting for about 10% of our budget. During the period of ESSER and COVID, our grants made up almost 30% of our budget, allowing us to offset needs on the local taxes to support the operations. Some of the things that we've been watching on the grant side, as I mentioned earlier, the Task Force on Special Education Services completed their report in January. As a result of that report, they did identify many challenges that are faced by many school districts within the state of Connecticut. Fortunately, this year, the General Assembly and the governor did approve $40 million additional in excess cost grants that are going to come to districts this year before June 30th. I believe the last time we checked, we're anticipating almost $890,000 to come towards Norwalk, and this will go a long way towards addressing some of those added costs that we're experiencing this year. And the governor and the General Assembly are also looking at additional special education funding for fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. So we will continue to monitor those. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level. We are monitoring that as well to determine to what extent some of these grants that either come directly to us or flow through the state would impact our general operation. So that is something that we're also monitoring. So as far as the grants, the categories are the same as what I shared before. For this year, we are budgeting, anticipating $30.6 million in grants. Most of our grants pay for salaries and benefits. That is kind of the intent of most of these grants, to provide those, like I mentioned, like excess cost grants or the alliance grants. They're really to offset personnel expenses from the local districts. And that's what our grants fund. So included in the budget book, there is a summary of these grants. There is also a detailed breakdown of all of these grants that come to the district, with a 3-year history of how these grants have been spent and what they have been going towards. So you have that in the budget. So at this point, I know this was a question last year when we came before you. The question was, what is the Board of Ed doing, or how are we beginning to address the delta between what was tentatively approved and what was approved by, recommended at least by the mayor and the Common Council? So what are we doing to go from the 9.7% to the 4% number, which is where we are now? So I would like to kind of walk you through that, just to give you a sense of where we are in this process. So obviously we were at 9.7%, 14%. The difference is a $13.2 million. And that's the reconciliation that we have begun to do currently. We are working with our school, because we do school-based budgets. And so we have been working with our principals to start identifying where and how we can make that reconciliation, so that we come at least as close as we can to what has been recommended so far. Part of the challenge in doing that is, this is how our staffing is made up of. On the local side, our tentative approved budget has about a little over 1,700 full-time equivalents. Our grant budget has about equivalent of 187 full-time equivalents. This is how they're spatially distributed within the district. So as you can see, the majority of our staff, 95% of them, are either in our elementary or high schools or middle schools, or in areas that provide instructional support. So the challenge becomes, when your budget is 80% personnel, and this is where your personnel live and reside, reductions to make the number balance will invariably impact our schools, our student-facing staff. We cannot do it any other way. It's just not possible, especially given the dollars that we're talking about. So this just kind of provides you some context into where we are. So when we began this process to get to the 9.7%, we had already initiated some initial reductions in central office. So at central office, we had eliminated a net of 14 positions that amounted to about a little over $2 million. And what that did for us, obviously, the superintendent mentioned about the efficiency study and some of the recommendations that were there regarding to staffing, but this kind of further magnifies the challenges that we have. And so in this initial reduction, we did eliminate positions in finance. There was a position in HR, positions in operations, curriculum, and information technology. So this was kind of like that first phase of putting this budget together. Ongoing now, working with schools, we have started the process of our school-based budgets. With our elementary schools, so far, we have identified almost just 79 positions reductions from our request. That has totaled about $6.6 million in total reductions from our request. Positions that are impacted by these reductions range from assistant principals, general education paras, teachers responsible for strings and band. We have looked at reduction in supplies and materials. We will be looking at school counselors. We're also looking at class sizes and how we can maximize those. So there will be an impact on teachers as well. And so this is, again, as I mentioned, an ongoing process. Within our middle schools, following the same format, at our middle school so far, we're looking so far at about 21 positions reductions from what was requested. This so far has totaled about 2.5 million in total reductions from the request. At the middle school, this will impact assistant principal, general education paras, strings, supplies and materials, school counselor, social worker, and teachers. And I will make the point that we're not saying that we're eliminating strings or band these programs, but we are reducing their availability. And then finally, in the high schools, and we're still ongoing, we're not done. We will be finishing our process end of next week. So far at the high schools, we've identified about 20 positions from the request. So far, $2.2 million in reductions. And at the high schools, we're looking at general education paras, supplies of materials, counselors, social worker, secretaries slash clerks, and teachers. So that kind of gives you a sense of where we are. So all of that combined, so far, we are at 121 position reductions from the initial request. From a dollar standpoint, we're at about 11.4, and we're still short to get to the 4%. We're short about $3 million to get to that target. And again, so this is it's still an ongoing process on our end. And we're working as hard as we can. This is challenging, not only for the finance team, but it also challenging for our schools. We're having some really tough conversations with our principals and their support staff. And we're having to make these adjustments. We're also hearing from our parents and how this is going to impact them. But we recognize the challenges that we're in. And so this kind of gives you a sense of where we are. And before I open it up for questions, I'm going to toss it back to Superintendent Estrella if you have any closing remarks. But again, thank you. Thank you for your time.
So thank you, Mr. Asmani. I just want to close out by providing some pleas to the BET. As Mr. Asmani articulated, we've been working tirelessly to try to get to the 4% recommended number that the mayor had proposed to the council. The council has approved and now is at your discretion for review. We honestly are seeing extensive dismantling of essential programs. I had the opportunity this month to meet with the SGCs of Wolf Pit and Kendall. And when you hear these parents speak, they speak with such passion and excitement about the great things that are happening in their schools and how a lot of the things that unfortunately are being dismantled are part of the essence of what makes their school so special. And inevitably, we have to provide the academic programs that students need to thrive. There's so many elements of the academic program that are being dismantled as a result of getting to this 4%. It's been very difficult to get to this number. Right now, we are at 5.6%. And if we continue to further reduce from this point on, we are talking about destroying essential programs that have yielded a lot of the positive outcomes that we have seen and some of the data points that I presented today. And if you've been following a lot of the work we've been doing over the course of the past several years and the workshops that we presented, you will see that a lot of the outstanding work that has been happening as a result of our great teachers, paraeducators, school leaders, and other support staff will not exist in the level in which we've had them. So we're playing that you guys get as close to 5.6% as you can, because otherwise we are going to be destroying critical programs that students need to continue to thrive. And I want to remind us that when we're talking about funding, these numbers represent real people, real programs and services that are critical to continue the success of our students. We also have to keep in mind that without the adequate funding, we're talking about increased class sizes and diminishing the critical supports that have yielded the positive outcomes that we've seen across our district. And we ask that, if possible, that you draw a little bit more from your fund balance so that we can have the services that we need so that our students can thrive. And Thank you, Mayor, for always supporting us like you did last year and giving us additional funds so that we could keep critical staff. Yet we can't keep doing that every year because it creates a lot of uncertainties. And then every year the ask seems to be a lot because we're trying to include those elements that were provided after the process. So that concludes our presentation, and we open it out now to Q&A. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for a very thoughtful presentation. Mr. Mayor, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Estrella, Lunda Asmani, and Sandra Feos for the presentation. It's very enlightening. I have a couple of comments. One, over the past several years, I have seen significant improvement in the Norwalk Public School system under the leadership of Dr. Estrella and her staff. I have the benefit of visiting every single school in the city of Norwalk at least once each year, and probably several times each year. And I am impressed every time I walk in and talk to the teachers, their dedication, their professionalism. I wish that I could give the entire amount asked for by the NPS. And it's very challenging. And I know in the past we've worked together to try to find extra funding, and I can commit that we will try to do that again this year. I was talking to Dr. Estrella. I said I'd love to find a way to get up to 4.5% this year. I was hoping that I could find some extra money on the city side. And as you know, that was quite a bit of a challenge as well. But we will do everything we can. Looking at the fund balance, the fund balance is very delicate. You don't want to take too much at any given time because then you find yourself at another cliff. You find yourself down the road taking more from the fund balance and then taking more again and taking more again, and until at some point you dwindle it to a point where it's not within our guidelines and not within the guidelines of our financial advisors. So we will work. We've been very fortunate with Senator Duff to get money from the state of Connecticut for the school board. We're going to continue to work with Senator Duff, but we will absolutely sit down with Dr. Estrella, her staff, my staff, and see what we can do to kind of find a way to increase the amount we're going to give them without really affecting the minimum balance, minimum budget requirement. So again, thank you for the wonderful presentation. We get it. We really do. Yeah, and you're operating on a shoestring, and we get that as well. And we do appreciate all the effort that you put into it and how hard you work in order to live within the budget that we are able to give. I think that my administration has been probably, I don't want to say more generous because it's not generous. We have given $78 million in increases to the Board of Education during the time I've been in office. And it's clearly a lot, but it's clearly not as good as it could be. Our students are the most important priority within the city. We understand that we have to educate our, Dr. Estrella expressed it beautifully. When our students thrive and our students succeed, so does Norwalk. And we have to keep that in our mind. So I would commit that we will do everything we can to find extra money to work with NPS and make sure that we can do whatever we can. So, and again, thank you, Dr. Estrella and your staff. A very good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions from other members of the Board of Estimate and Taxation? Ms. Yang.
Great. First off, yes, this is an excellent presentation. The numbers are very clear and it's extremely helpful. If I look at some of the numbers here, so I look at the transportation number. Can you explain the program, which is the school choice with guaranteed transportation?
So Ms. Fayos, you want to speak to the transportation component? I'll speak to the choice. So
Sure.
these are the pathway opportunities that we have across the district. We have the International Baccalaureate program. We have programs around the arts. Wolf Pit is a magnet arts school, so that would be an example. We also have our program with Concord Magnet School and a few others that parents have the ability to apply to. And we provide transportation for those families to be able to take advantage of the different learning experiences that we have across the district, regardless of where they live. Another example of that is the Marine Science Program at Jefferson, at West Rock, and Brian McMahon. And I don't know if you want to speak to the transportation. Is your question around what the program is, or
the costs associated with school choice and guaranteed transportation?
Do you want to elaborate?
Sure. The cost associated with it has been a progressive cost over 3 years. So we have added it year after year. There was a presentation that broke down what that cost would be that the board approved. So the additional cost is $700,000. And at the end, by next year, it'll be about $900,000.
And so how long has it been that we've been offering guaranteed transportation?
There's several levels of it. So there's been some form of guaranteed transportation at the high school level and at other sites for quite some time. It predates this administration. What was added for this year, it's as programs were added on, we added those programs. Middle school choice was something that was added, I believe, 3 years ago. And it's because each middle school started to offer a specific pathway. So Dr. Estrella pointed out, like PONUS has a STEM academy. West Rocks has a marine science concentration. Nathan Hale has an IB concentration alongside Roten. And so then because of that, it expanded the choices within our middle schools also. But the high school programs, we had always bused to, and there were some elementary school programs that we had bused to.
So on that, a question would be, do you need to have the guaranteed transportation for this program to be successful? And then I'm sorry, the second part,
that's okay.
We rely upon the public transportation of the North Transit District to help in transporting students rather than having, can we leverage some of the things that we already have?
I'll try to take a stab at the first one, if that's okay, Dr. Estrella.
Absolutely.
One of the noticings that we had early on in Dr. Estrella's administration is who was actually taking advantage of some of these choice programs. And some choice programs, or some people that were asking for intra-district transfers, which was a slightly different, were parents that can actually transport their children during that time. We had quite a bit of interest expressing that they would go to a different school, but because of the parents' work schedule, students weren't actually accessing the programs that may exist at another school, even though that school had the space to receive those students. So you would take something like a West Rocks that was overcrowded, but we wanted kids to be able to take advantage of IB somewhere else. Parents expressed that they wanted to go do robotics somewhere else, but they really couldn't commit to dropping off their children. That was one of the things that actually prompted us to look at the choice program. But Dr. Estrella, I'll let you expand on that.
Yeah, and I also want to add that everybody doesn't have the luxury of private transportation.
Yeah.
And the accessibility of getting to our different schools. Not every school in our district is easily accessible by public transportation. And we wanted to make sure that when we opened up programs across the organization, that all children have access to them. And if we didn't afford them with transportation services, then we would be excluding certain students in the community, and that would not be fair.
Yeah, and I can address the public transportation
Thank
piece
you.
also, Ms. Yang.
Please.
Okay, we're required by law to provide students with transportation if they live within certain parameters. So for instance, if you live further than 2 miles away from your school for the secondary schools, we're required to provide public transportation along with public schooling. So even though we may have like a robust public busing system, we would still be required to provide transportation for our minors who attend our schools, and students within that have the opportunity to add to choose transportation or to choose to take public transportation if they choose. But we have an obligation as a school district to provide that transportation. And there's different parameters based on their age as to when you're considered what we call a walker, meaning you can walk to school, but then after that, we have to actually provide some form of transportation.
May I ask a question about the South Norfolk?
Sure.
Okay. So in the executive summary and in the presentation, it talked about that the South Norfolk's cost is anticipated for this upcoming fiscal year to be about $900,000. If I go to page 67 in Mr. Asmani's book, you're projecting to have 43 full-time equivalents at that school, and it's just going to be K through 3. Is there a way to leverage resources or principals or supervision from some of the other schools to, because I don't know, the 43, I'm not sure that, is that 43 people is covered by $900,000?
Mr. Asmani, you're muted.
Thank you, Ms. Yang, for that question. The 900,000 is the incremental on top of what we're paying this year. So what we're saying is the 900,000, because we're adding that third grade classroom, 450,000 covers 3 additional teachers that we don't have currently because we don't have a third grade. And we also have some para educators out to work with those teachers. So that is that's about 450,000 for the staff. The other 450,000 is basically maintaining the building, because this is a new building that we don't have. And so with additional security to this facility, custodial services, because we're not providing any of these services at this building. And so this is the beginning, how to get the building online. So that's what the 900K is. It's the incremental, but not the total cost of the school.
And we also use grants to also support the needs in that school as well.
Understood. I'd like to go to some of the expenses that you talked about in the beginning with $500,000 for training. Is that still to be anticipated, the budget of that level for this upcoming year?
So this was the 500,000 that was for IB training?
Yes.
That was actually over the course. Is that okay, Dr. Estrella, that I explained, because it came from, okay. That was actually over the course of 3 years. We have invested 500,000. Initially, when you start an international baccalaureate program, there's a lot of staff training. But that expense does go down from year to year. So the projected expense for this upcoming year, for instance, is under $100,000.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes. That's the overall investment was what that slide had captured so far.
I also noticed that parking is a very large number, and it's going to be a large number for the city and for the school district. And so back to the efficiency study, is there a way that we can get economies of scale by potentially combining those departments?
Before you answer
you-
that question, Ed, and everyone else, I have to jump off at this time. I want to thank the Board of Ed for their presentation, and we'll I'm sure vote on this as with the entirety of the budget some point soon. But thank you for your presentation, and I'm sorry I can't be here for the duration.
Thank you, Ed.
Mr.
Have a
Camacho,
good evening.
good evening.
Ms. Yang, I think I didn't catch the beginning of your question. I apologize. I think it cut out.
Yes, and I apologize for my
Yes.
connection. Purchasing a large number in both the city and the Board of Education, is there an opportunity, like through the efficiency study, to combine? And given the size, maybe we can save 5%, 10%, which is real money.
Purchasing, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Osmani, do you want to take a stab at it?
So I'd be happy to. So yeah, so as a matter of fact, we actually work closely with the city, and I see Jared coming on camera. Our two purchasing departments actually collaborate well. We already use the same platform for bidding. We use the same platform for bidding. I serve on board on panels for Jared when he's hiring in that department. His team serves on mine. But in our department, we actually, on the Board of Ed side, we only have two purchasing individuals. And I believe that's about the same number as on the city side as well. And so this was something that was looked at the efficiency study. But that is how we gain these efficiencies, is because we do collaborate and work together on the purchasing side. Jared, I don't know if you had anything to add on that piece.
No, not much. Just more specifically, we Munis is another program that we collaborate on, and so wherever we can, especially with regard to IT software, we try to collaborate as much as possible.
Great, thank you. Have just I think one more question here. Is over the last 5 years, where we had ARPA funding for COVID era jobs, how many are still existing that will continue rolling forward into this year and you anticipate in the future?
Can you repeat your question? You continue to cut off and it's hard to comprehend.
I apologize. COVID era funding jobs.
Mhm.
What is the status of where they are now and what anticipated for the future?
Ms. Yang, may I repeat the question and then see if I got it right?
Yes.
I think I believe I heard you say that there were some positions that were funded with ARPA funds. How many of those positions still exist and how many do we anticipate moving forward?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'll go first, and maybe Mr. Pennington and Dr. Estrella can also add in too. I believe I think it was 2 budget cycles ago is when we had a detailed conversation about the ESSER funds and the ESSER funds expiring. There were a number of positions that we did phase out of the ESSER funding, but there were a number of positions that were added during ESSER that we maintained. And the reason they were maintained is because some of the challenges that we saw that resulted from COVID. Actually, there were some that were existing even pre-COVID, but the ESSER dollars gave us the opportunity to start addressing some of these social emotional needs. We hired interventionists and those types of things. And I see Mr. Pennington nodding his head. So we did do a deep analysis of those positions. There were a number of positions that we did phase out, but there were a number of positions that we've retained and have since been absorbed in our budget for about 2 to 3 years now since the expiration of the ESSER funds. And I'll toss it over to the team.
Yeah, we used a lot of grant funding to absorb those positions, Ms. Yang. So we moved them into other grants and freed up other grants to be able to absorb a lot of our coaches, a lot of our improvement teachers, and then had secured other grants to bring in some staff that was for social emotional support. Dr. Estrella?
And also, like our guidance counselors at the elementary school level, initially, we were able to bring in. And even if you looked at the presentation today, we are at risk of losing many of them, yet the need continues to exist. And we're highly concerned about the success that we've had, which doesn't put us in a predicament where we've achieved the levels that we want yet. But we were very happy to see that we've made some positive strides. And we are in a predicament where we're going to be losing some of these essential personnel that have been changing the reality of where we were in a really positive direction. So we feel really saddened by the fact that we're losing things that our kids continue to need.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, you first and then Kendrick.
Thank you. Why don't we let Kendrick go first and I'll follow him. Thank you.
I recognize during the presentation there's an increase in MLN and special needs. Wanted to see if there's anything done in advance of the kids entering school to be more efficient, just speeding them up in regards to MLN or special needs, just because I recognize if they're in the classroom, that could slow everyone down. But if there's programs and initiatives before they enter, that could help reduce costs there.
So I think it depends when they enter, right? We have early childhood programs across the district. Particularly, we have one that supports students with specialized needs to ensure that they have a strong entry into kindergarten. So those services have yielded really positive outcomes, as well as within the school structure while they're with us. If they come in at a later time, we have the interventionists and MLL providers, as well as special education teachers supporting students that have specialized needs to make sure that they get the supports they need to be able to engage in the academic requirements of their grade level and continue to advance towards success. And if you look at, we can share, or if you could look into our archives, our graduation rates for MLL students as well as students receiving specialized services have increased significantly as a result of these supports.
I will add, though, if I may, it's that our largest group coming in tends to be kids who are not at the preschool level. They tend to be older.
And I would just add one piece.
Yeah.
And that is that we also have partnerships for before and after school programs as well that also support our students in a wider range, a wide array of supports.
Thank you. Mr. Gillirat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Strayes. Thank you, Mr. Ismami. I have just a few questions or comments. The first thing is, I know that this is a critical time, and I know that people want to use the fund balance and everything, but you got to look, when you look at the big picture, obviously the Board of Education is our biggest cost for the city. And then the next line item on our presentation for the city from Jared is the debt service of $42 million that we have to pay. And that goes for the number of schools, the 3 schools, Cranberry, Norwalk High School, and obviously the South Norwalk School, in addition to the renovations that we have all been happy with over the last 5, 6 years that I've been on the board. So yes, we'd love, as the mayor said, we'd love to give you as much as we can, but we're up against some limits here based on the fund balance, based on keeping AAA ratings, and everything ties together. So like I said, we'd love to give as much as we could, but we also have guardrails that we have a fiduciary responsibility as a city to keep. in order to keep our ratings. Question on the students. I read an article the other day. I know with everything going on in DC, where are you with the student count? In your report earlier in the year, you were at 11,415 as of October 25th. October 2025. So I'm sorry, as of you were projecting, 11,415. Where are you now with the student body? I'm just curious.
Osmani, do you have the
I'm
latest?
gonna look it up
We're
right
looking it up as we
now for
speak.
today's number. It's very quick. So right now we are at 11,720.
Oh, okay, because there was an article in the paper the other day saying that student enrollment was kind of down because of what was going on in DC. That's not the case?
That's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
They're
Yeah.
pulling the data from a different, from
Yeah,
a
this is
source that
live
is
data that I
outdated
have. Yeah.
and it's not to date.
So every year we upload our data and it's an October 1st number. That's the number that the state has. And then next October 1st, they will get a new set of numbers. But we have our own rolling enrollment numbers that's in our student information system. And that's the real numbers.
So you're at 11,000. You were projecting in your report earlier 11,415 for the year. So you're over what you're
Yes.
projecting at this stage today.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Also, what about the AIT versus P-Tech? My son went to AIT, and then with 3 buses going down, and I think there were 3 going down to Stanford. Is that still the case, or are those kids staying now in
one bus.
Stanford?
We do have some
In Norwalk,
students.
sorry.
We do have some students that still go to Stanford, but we're down to 1 bus.
It's down to 1 bus?
Mhm.
So
And I
that
just
money
want to
stay-
different. I'm sorry.
Please.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay.
We're down to 1 bus, but P-Tech and AIT are different programs. So I just need to emphasize that because the focus is very different. One is very more college bound and ends with an associate's degree for those students interested.
In P-Tech.
And P-Tech, and the other one focuses on more high school to workforce. So their purpose is very different, and both are just as critical, but they service very different needs.
So it's down to 1 bus. Okay.
So it's not-
And Mr. Asmani, you said we're into this, the New York, excuse me, the Connecticut State has given us another. I think the number was about, what was it? On the 40 million, we were going to get about 870,000, 830,000
We're around
anticipated.
there, between 800 and 900.
Is that number in your 4% or not?
No, so that 800 is actually for this fiscal year, for FY25. We would get that before June 30th.
Okay.
So what we would use that for, because we're already we're already overspending this year for special education, and we had been talking about perhaps coming to the city for a special appropriation, but this will allow us to mitigate that need and close that gap for this year up to June 30th.
Oh, okay. So that's for this fiscal year. Okay.
Yes.
And the other thing is, I'll just say what Ann mentioned on purchasing. I remember here when I was on the BET, I started, and I think Lunda, you were here too when Tom was here, and I think that we only had one. A consolidation is the big picture: HR, IT, finance. I mean, I think Tom Hamilton did the CFO for the city side and the schools. Remember that? I mean, or it was done combined that year. Were you here for that?
I believe he helped out when there was a vacancy. I believe that's when the city CFO retired or left the city, and you didn't have a position, and he was asked to help on the city side during that transition.
Oh, that's right. And
3
you were
months or
helping.
so.
You were working as an assistant at the time for them.
Correct.
And we had one CFO for both. He did both the board and the city side that year, right?
For about 3 months.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying consolidation is a thing that I think we've been talking about as long as I've been on this board, between the city side and and there has to be some ways to combine the HR, IT, finance, and the purchasing. So we've been saying that all along.
Yeah, I think even in the efficiency study, I don't think that was a recommendation because our services are so different and the needs are so different. Where there were opportunities to build efficiencies, we have been strategically working to do that. And particularly even with payroll, we collaborate as well as, like Mr. Asmani said, on the finance side of things, wherever we can engage in those processes, we do so. But in terms of volume, the people that we have sometimes are not enough to do the work. And with HR, there was a recommendation in the efficiency study that we added individuals to support the work, and we have not been able to do that. So we're constantly understaffed to do the massive work of managing the personnel at the district level. So I don't see how we could build an efficiency in that way, particularly because we manage very different systems that are governed by very different federal and state regulations.
Well, it's just something to keep considering. It sounds like you're looking to do it on the purchasing side. I would continue to see if we could. I would continue to see where we could do it on the other greater side also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, again, for these questions, because I think they're all very important. It takes a lot of courage to agree to an efficiency study, to bring in somebody from the outside, to take a look at what you do, make recommendations, and then, look at those recommendations and say, yeah, that's not a bad idea. The Norwalk Public Schools immediately agreed to an efficiency study, and I was impressed with that. And efficiency studies don't always mean less money. As you can see, they've recommended that the Norwalk Public Schools in several areas were understaffed. They recommended in several areas where the city of Norwalk was understaffed. And we've been working together to look at the different possibilities, the different opportunities that we would have to combine resources. But it's very challenging because between the two entities, I think we have somewhere maybe around 2,000 employees. And so if we did HR or we did purchasing, that doesn't mean just one person from the city can do both. It means we'd have about 3 or 4 people in that department doing those things. As I mentioned earlier, I would encourage the board here to not reduce the 4% that we put forward. I will also work with Dr. Estrella and her team and my team and see what opportunities exist. I know that I'd love to see if I can get them up to 5%, 5.6%. If we can find a way to do that without increasing the MBR, we certainly will. And we have that opportunity over the next couple of months to see what opportunities exist. And I think it's critically important because, as I mentioned earlier, there's no more of a priority than our students. And again, as I go through the different schools and I see the professionalism of the teachers, the dedication of the teachers, I see the different school. I was at Ponus Ridge yesterday for the STEM. I saw these young kids building robots. I saw them building 3D 3D, I can't think of the word, but 3D printers.
3D printing.
And doing all those things that I never saw before. And that is because of the creativity, the vision that exists now within the school system. And again, I've seen a tremendous, tremendous improvement since Dr. Estrella has been on board. And she's got a wonderful team. I have a wonderful team. But again, we do have limits. But we will try to do everything we can to figure out how we can work together and make sure that we do the right things for our students, make sure that we do the right things for our citizens. It's not an easy balance, believe me. Anybody that thinks this is easy, they're kidding themselves. But we will do the best we can because I think we've got the talent on both teams to do that. So again, thank you. I would encourage that we don't even consider going below the 4% we put forward. And I want to make sure that we look to other opportunities that we have. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Estrella.
I would be remiss if I didn't say, Mayor, this is our last time presenting to you in the BET. It's kind of bittersweet. We're happy that you're gonna go into new adventures, right? We all deserve to retire, but it's sad at the same time. So just thank you for being such a great partner in the work and for listening to us this evening and for addressing a lot of the deferred maintenance that has existed in our district for such a long time. We're beautifying the schools. It's essential for students to have great learning spaces. And I understand, Troy, I'm going to say Troy because I don't want to mispronounce your name.
That's fine.
Your last name. And I understand like the debt balance situation and like the efforts the city has made in building Cranberry, Norwalk High School, and Sona is on its way. I also want to reiterate that we can't have beautiful schools and not have strong programs. And like the mayor had articulated around Ponas Ridge, all of that was through grant dollars. So we're also very cognizant wherever we can to find resources to enhance what's already in place. But Mayor, thank you for your partnership and for all the great things you've been doing for the city of Norwalk.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella. Look, before we close, I will say, Mr. Mayor, Dr. Estrella, I encourage you to continue to work together, encourage you to continue to be creative. I will remind us all, though, that $242 million is not a shoestring budget. It is not insignificant. It is a significant amount of money that we are investing in the schools today. It's 55% of the city's total operating budget. If you add in-kind services, it goes up to almost 60% of the city's operating budget. The commitment to education is clear, and I applaud it. I am glad to be a citizen who sees it. But I also have to make sure that we balance the needs of all the citizens of Norwalk. So to the mayor's comment, the MBR has to stay where it is, right? If we can get creative beyond that, please, by all means, use every opportunity that is presented to you to do so. But let's not for a minute think we are not investing in education in the city of Norwalk. Because if you look at it, it is very clear the investment we continue to make. Okay. With that, may I get a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are adjourned. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, everyone. Go ahead, Rob. It's just you and me. You can sign off. And Londa.